Hello and welcome. I'm excited to share this presentation with you as part of my preparation for the Advanced Sommelier exam. Whether you're studying on your own, for your own journey, a curious enthusiast, or just here to explore, I hope you find value in what we cover today. In this video, I will be exploring North America, uncovering the unique characteristics and stories behind its wines. Before we dive in, I want to highlight the trusted sources I have used to create this presentation, some of my absolute favorite wine books. If you're researching or expanding your wine knowledge, these are great resources to have on your shelf. Now let's get started and uncork the secrets of North America. The Mexican wine industry holds the distinction of being the oldest in the Americas, with roots tracing back to the 1530s when Spanish colonizers introduced viticulture to the New World. The first vines were planted in the Puebla region, but the area's climate proved too wet for sustained cultivation of wine grapes. Further exploits discovered various indigenous vines in Coahuila, where a Jesuit-built mission is credited with establishing the oldest winery in the Americas in 1597, located in the Valle de Parras. Despite early successes, King Felipe II decreed in 1595 that all non-religious vines be uprooted to protect Spanish exports, restricting Mexico to producing grapes, mostly for raisins, table grapes, and brandy. Today, 7 states produce wine, though 85% of Mexican wine production is concentrated in Baja California, particularly in the Valle de Guadalupe. This region is renowned for its distinctive vintners, and it is dry, sandy soils which are resistant to phylloxera. Key players such as Santo Tomas, founded in 1888, and modern pioneers like Montezenic and Hugo da Costa have helped propel this region to international prominence with diverse grape variety and sustainable practices. Hugo da Costa is notably responsible for creating La Escuelita, the little school, an educational facility constructed from upcycled materials, and Paralelo, Mexico's first gravity-fed winery. Mexico's wine evolution reflects a commitment to quality and adaptability, bolstered by significant international investments. The brandy house Domecq is now owned by González Bias. Henri Lurton of Chateau Brancartenac has made substantial contributions, and the industry has embraced trends such as biodynamics, a broad range of grape varieties, reduced oak usage, and natural wine production, all of which addresses the criticisms of overly salty wines. Beyond Baja, regions like Querétaro, Chihuahua, Guanajuato, with their high-altitude vineyards, also contribute to Mexico's diverse vinous landscape, showing a balance between heritage and forward-thinking winemaking. Canada, once described by Voltaire as a few acres of snow, was originally known for its ice wine production. However, climate change has partly enabled a shift towards Bordeaux and Burgundy varietals, particularly in British Columbia and Ontario. 7 out of 10 provinces now produce wine, with production beginning in the mid-1800s and initially focusing on hybrid and Native American grape varieties. Modern production began in earnest in the 1990s after the ratification of NAFTA, which opened the Canadian borders to U.S. imports. By 2018, Ontario boasted over 200 wineries, while British Columbia had more than 300. Quebec, home to over 150 wineries, faces harsh winters that require vines to be buried for protection. Snowfall can be so significant that it covers grape clusters, affecting even ice wine production. To address this, laws now allow for grapes to be harvested and suspended in nets above the vines to ensure proper freezing. While Canada's industry historically focuses on hybrid grapes like Bac Noir and Marshall Faux, vinifera plantings have gradually increased in the southern regions, aided by a warming climate. Nova Scotia, though subject to bitterly cold winters, benefits from its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, which helps moderate the climate. With fewer than 20 wineries in the region, it focuses on traditional method sparkling wines, often made by the hybrid grape L'Acadie Blanc. Its sole appellation, Tidal Bay, refers to not a location, but to a style of wine, dry, aromatic, crisp, and fresh whites. British Columbia has grown to rival Ontario's reputation, with most of its wine sold and consumed in Vancouver. The province has a total of 22 official geographic indications, including 9 major GIs and 13 sub-GIs: Okanagan Valley, Milkoming Valley, Fraser Valley, Vancouver Island, Gulf Islands, Lillooet, Thompson Valley, Shuswap, and Kootenais. These regions collectively account for approximately 10,000 acres under vine. Okanagan Valley is British Columbia's largest production region, accounting for 86% of the province's vineyard acreage, 62% of its wineries, and approximately 40% of its production. Golden Mile Bench became British Columbia's first sub-GI in 2015, followed by Okanagan Falls in 2018. The region produces a fairly even split of white and red wines, with traditional method sparkling wine on the rise, while ice wine production remains limited. Key white grape varieties include Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer, while Merlot, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Sauvignon dominate red wine production. The Okanagan Valley benefits from several climatic moderators, including Okanagan Lake, Skaha Lake, Lake Osoyoos, the Coast Mountains, and the North Cascades. The region is cooler and wetter in the north, while the south is warmer and drier due to the rain shadow effect created by the mountains. Osoyoos, Canada's only desert, features warm temperatures and sandy soils. The lake in Osoyoos is a glacial trench similar to the formation to New York's Finger Lakes. Located above latitude 49 degrees north, the Okanagan Valley aligns with Champagne, Rheingau, and England in terms of geography. Its landscape is also reminiscent of the vineyards along the Rhine. The valley's average growing season temperature is 61 degrees Fahrenheit, mirroring these prominent wine regions as well. The Smilkameen Valley, the province's second largest wine region, stretches east-west and is known for its gravel-dominated soils. Varietals such as Chardonnay, Riesling, and both Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon thrive here. To the west, the Fraser Valley, located closer to Vancouver, is heavily influenced by maritime conditions, producing wines such as Cigaribba, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, and Bacchus. Vancouver Island, with fewer than 30 wineries, is centered in the Cowichan Valley near the capital, Victoria. The region's cool and wet climate often forces growers to focus on the hybrid varieties, while the Gulf Island specializes on Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Ortega, and Maréchal Faux. Additionally, regions like Lillooet, Thompson Valley, Shuswap, and the Kootenais, which gained official status in 2018, continue to expand BC's diverse wine landscape. Ontario, moderated by the Great Lakes, and accounts for approximately 50% of the nation's production. Wine regions are designated DVAs, designated viticultural areas, with the Niagara Peninsula standing as the most important DVA. The industry received a significant boost in the 1970s from the production of ice wine, which has since become a hallmark of Canadian viticulture. While most wines are consumed domestically, with limited export, the semi-continental climate plays a crucial role in grape growing. The Great Lakes, particularly Lake Ontario, and Lake Erie, significantly influence the region's climate. Lake Ontario helps moderate Arctic air masses during the winter, while Lake Erie's warmer waters draw cool air from Lake Ontario in the summer, creating a favorable growing environment. Additionally, the Niagara River's ability to store summer's heat delay bud break in the spring and extends ripening in the fall, allowing for a production of high-quality wines. Climate change has had a positive impact in Ontario, particularly in terms of extending the growing season and enhancing the quality of the grapes. While ice wine remains the region's flagship product, other wines are becoming more prominent. Varieties such as Vidal Blanc, Cabernet Franc, and Riesling continue to thrive for ice wine production, but dry table wines are also gaining popularity. Grapes like Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Gamay, and Syrah are increasingly common in the region for dry wine offerings. Additionally, traditional method sparkling wines are being produced, adding to the diversity of Canada's wine industry. Other notable DVAs include Lake Erie North Shore, which features the Pelly Island sub-DVA, and Prince Edward County, located along the north shore of Lake Ontario. The United States is the most important wine consumer in the world and the fourth largest producer behind only Spain, France, and Italy. When colonizers arrived in North America, they found native grapes and introduced the European species, which failed to thrive due to the then unknown phylloxera pest. Soon, hybrids began to emerge, from random and spontaneous combinations of North American and European species, resulting in grapes such as Alexander, Catawba, Delaware, and Isabella. Wine production was an official aim of the Virginia and Carolina colonies, with the first vinifera cuttings planted in Virginia in 1619. However, these vines failed to survive due to the climate change challenges, pests, and diseases. It wasn't until the 19th century that solutions began to appear. French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Greek experts attempted vineyard plantings but were thwarted by phylloxera and fungal diseases. The accidental discovery of vinifera labrusca hybrids helped pave the way for success, and the first successful commercial wine production occurred in Indiana around 1806 with the Alexander grape. Many other hybrids were introduced thereafter, solidifying the industry's foothold with varieties such as Catawba, Delaware, Isabella, and Norton. Most of these were used for white wine production, except for Norton, of course. However, European consumers were dissatisfied with these native grape wines, often described as having a foxy aroma. Permanent and extensive wine production was first established around Cincinnati, Ohio in 1830s by Nicholas Longworth with sparkling Catawba. Soon after, vineyards near the shores of Lake Erie and Herman, Missouri, and Finger Lakes region of New York followed suit. Pre-Civil War southern states also produced wines from hybrids and native muscadine grape. By the mid-1850s, hybrid wines became a deliberate focus, especially in the East Coast. During this period, the Concord grape was developed, becoming the most important hybrid, though it was primarily used for grape juice rather than wine. Wine growing continued to thrive on the East Coast, with New Jersey, Virginia, Arkansas, New York, Ohio, and Missouri as major strongholds. On the West Coast, Spanish colonizers introduced Vitis vinifera to Mexico in the 16th century through the Mission grape, also known as Criolla Chica in Argentina and País in Chile. California's introduction to vinifera came in the mid-18th century when Franciscan missionary Junipero Serra planted the first vineyard in San Diego in 1769. At the time, California was free of phylloxera, though Pierce's disease was identified there in 1892. Regions like Mexico, Texas, and California saw greater success with vinifera than the East Coast. After the Mexican-American War and the gold rush of the 1840s, waves of new immigrants brought additional vines, causing California wine production to surge. By 1900, production had grown from a few 100,000 gallons to 30 million gallons annually. The Mission grape was the first planted in New Mexico and California, followed by the introduction of numerous other vinifera varieties, with Zinfandel taking the prominence. Eventually, the California Wine Association was formed, stabilizing prices and distributing wines across the country, even exporting to Great Britain. However, the industry faced a major setback with prohibition, and by 1919, the U.S. was producing over 55 million gallons of wine annually. The 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution outlawed the production, sale, and transportation of intoxicating beverages, though consumption was not prohibited. Wine could still be produced for sacramental and medicinal purposes, and home winemaking grew in popularity. Wineries shipped unfermented grape juice to consumers, including warning labels detailing what not to do to avoid fermentation into wine. Prohibition ended in 1933 with the 21st Amendment, but the industry was left in disarray. The Great Depression compounded the challenges, and wine became an unfamiliar luxury. Sweet, high-alcohol wines dominated the market, and government investment in wine development ceased. Universities became the new leaders of wine research, with UC Davis launching its enology program in 1935. However, post-prohibition regulations such as the three-tier system and state-controlled alcohol laws continued to stifle the industry. For example, the three-tier system requires separation between suppliers and distributors and retailers, making exceptions rare. The Second World War brought temporary prosperity to American wine as European production halted. Large distilleries purchased wineries, but after the war, demand collapsed and wineries resorted to sell bulk wines to wholesalers. Wines were sold under generic names like Burgundy, Chablis, Sherry, and Champagne, for example, and the number of wineries in Ohio dropped from 149 in 1940 to 47 by 1960. Innovators like Philip Wagner introduced new French hybrids, including Ceval, Cebal, and Baco, for better yields and disease resistance. Frank Shoemaker popularized varietal labeling, which remain a standard today. By the 1970s, the American wine industry began to recover. California wineries grew from 240 in 1970 to 3,800 by 2014, signalizing a renaissance in quality winemaking. The focus shifted to producing high quality wines with fewer varietals, blending traditional European techniques with innovative technology. International investment soared and demand grew exponentially, with production rising from 267 million gallons in 1970 to 856 million gallons in 2013. Consumption also increased to 4 gallons per capita annually. Gallo and Constellation became the largest wineries in the world, while other states expanded production thanks to improved viticultural practices, including the use of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Regions like Yakima and Willamette Valley flourished, and all 50 states began producing wine, often supported by tourism. Virginia's wine industry was initiated by Thomas Jefferson and Monticello, and now features 7 AVAs located between the Appalachian Mountains and Chesapeake Bay: Monticello, Shenandoah Valley, Middleburg, Virginia; Rocky Knob, Virginia Peninsula, Virginia's Eastern Shore, and Northern Neck, George Washington birthplace. New York is the fourth most significant wine producing state with 7 major wine regions. Lake Erie, with harsh winters in the north that have necessitated the use of cold hardy species like Labrusca's Concord for juice and jelly production. However, climate change has provided growers with opportunities to experiment with other varieties. Long Island. The Atlantic Ocean moderates the seasons, and its 3 AVAs, North Fork, Hamptons, and Long Island, focus on Bordeaux varietals and Chardonnay. Finger Lakes. This region comprises 11 lakes formed by glacial trenches and was first inhabited by the Iroquois Confederacy. Vines were planted as early as 1850s. Dr. Constantine Frank demonstrated that early ripening varietals like Riesling and Chardonnay were ideal for the area. Cayuga Lake AVA, established in 1988, is the region's oldest AVA. And today, the Finger Lakes is the fastest growing AVA in New York, home to approximately 50% of the state's wineries. Hudson River region, home to New York's first commercial vintage in 1839. This region grows Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc, and Friulano, benefiting from the moderating influence of the Hudson River. Champlain Valley of New York, established in 2016, this AVA focuses on hybrid varieties. Upper Hudson, created in 2018, and Niagara Escarpment, known for hybrid varietals, especially Vidal Blanc for ice wine production. The American Southwest has a viticultural history dating back to 1650. Texas, with 8 AVAs: Texas High Plains, Texoma, Bell Mountain, Fredericksburg, Escondido Valley, Texas Davis Mountain, Texas Hill Country, and Mesilla Valley, shared with New Mexico. Texas is home to the highest number of indigenous grapevine species in the world. Thomas V. Munson is credited with saving vinifera from phylloxera, and he hailed from Texas. After Prohibition, the industry rebounded with experimental plantings in the high-altitude region of Texas High Plain AVA, which now produces 80% of the state's wine. New Mexico, featuring 3 AVAs: Middle Rio Grande, Mimbres Valley, and Mesilla Valley, shared with Texas. This state benefits from the Rocky Mountains, where high elevation cools the climate. Arizona, with 3 AVAs: Sonoita, Wilcox, and Verde Valley, established in 2021. Arizona's high elevation make it similar to New Mexico, focusing on Rhone and Spanish varietals. Colorado, home to 2 AVAs, West Elks and Grand Valley. Colorado's wine industry was influenced by Warren Winiarski, who helped establish Ivancy Winery, inspiring modern producers. Southern California, the Temecula AVA, located near the coast, enjoys ocean breezes and temperatures similar to northern Napa. Virginia has a continental climate characterized by a short growing season, hot and humid summers prone to storms, and long cold winters. Most vineyards are located east of the Blue Ridge Mountains, with growing interest in Shenandoah Valley AVA to the west. Here, advisors like Eric Boissonneau from the Medoc recommend planting on higher slopes with rocky soils. New York's climate varies by region. The Finger Lakes have a continental climate moderated by Lake Ontario, Seneca Lake, the deepest of the Finger Lakes, Cayuga Lake, and Keuka Lake. In contrast, Long Island has a temperate maritime climate influenced by the Atlantic Ocean. In the southwest, Texas High Plains is a high-altitude, flat region with deep calcareous soils, cool nights, cold winter, and constant winds. Arizona and New Mexico also benefit from high-elevation vineyard sites, while Colorado enjoys the moderating influence of the Colorado and Gunnison rivers. The most prominent grape varieties in Virginia include Nebbiolo and Vermentino, championed by Zonin of Italy, as well as Malvasia Passito, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Petit Manseng, Viognier, and Norton, with key contributors such as Horton Vineyards and Jennifer McLeod from Chrysalis. In New York, the Finger Lakes specialize in vinifera varieties, particularly Riesling and Cabernet Franc, which make up about 22% of plantings. Long Island focuses on Bordeaux varieties and Chardonnay. In the southwestern states, a wide range of cultivars is grown, with a strong emphasis on Rhone and Spanish varietals. The American Viticultural Area, AVA system, regulated by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, TTB, establishes geographically defined wine regions in the United States based on specific geographic, climatic, and historical characteristics. Unlike European appellation systems, AVAs impose no restrictions on grape varieties, yields, or production methods. The first AVA designated was Augusta, Missouri in 1980, and while not all wine labels require an appellation of origin, its inclusion becomes mandatory when certain label claims are made, such as a vintage date, varietal designation, type of designation of varietal significance, semi-generic designation, estate bottle claim, or when the product name includes the word brand. In the United States, specific content and regional requirements govern the labeling of wines. For regional designations, a wine must be made from at least 75% of the grapes grown in the stated state or county, except in California and Oregon, where the requirement is 100%, and Washington, where it is 95%. Wines labeled with an AVA must contain a minimum of 85% grapes from that AVA, while single vineyard designations require 95%. For vintage labeling, wines from a state or county must include 85% grapes from that stated vintage, whereas AVA-labeled wines must meet a higher threshold of 95%. Regarding grape varieties, a single vinifera varietal must comprise at least 75% of that varietal, with Oregon requiring 90% for most varieties except for specific exceptions like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah, which remain at 75%. Wineries made from Labrusca varietals need only 51% of the stated varietal, and if multiple varietals are listed, the label must either specify the percentage of each or none at all. According to the TTB, state bottled means that 100% of the wine came from grapes grown on land owned or controlled by the winery, and both the winery and the vineyard must be located within the boundaries of the labeled viticultural area. The winery must crush and ferment the grapes and finish, age, process, and bottle the wine in a continuous process on its premises, the wine at no time having left the premises of the bottling winery. Wine labeled as state bottled must meet the requirements for using a viticultural area as the appellation of origin and be labeled with that viticultural area. Here are some examples. In this label, a minimum of 75% of the wine must be made using Merlot. Additionally, at least 75% of the grapes must originate from within the United States, and the wine must be fully finished within the United States. In this label, at least 75% of the grapes must come from ZZZ County. However, if an AVA were specified instead of a county or state, a minimum of 85% of the grapes must come from that AVA. If a single vineyard were named, the requirement increases to 95%. For a statewide origin labeling using California or Oregon, 100% of the grapes must originate from the named state. 85% of the grapes must be from the 2008 vintage unless an AVA is specified, in which case 95% of the vintage must be from the specified vintage. And if a varietal is labeled, at least 75% of the wine must be made from the specified variety. And in this label, since Willamette Valley is an Oregon AVA, 95% of the grapes must come from this region. If the wine were from a California AVA, only 85% of the grapes would need to come from this specified AVA. If Oregon is listed as the origin, 100% of the grapes must be from the state. 95% of the grapes must be from the 2000 vintage, as an AVA is specified. And for state or county labeling, instead, the requirement drops to 85%. 90% of the wine must be Pinot Noir, as Oregon mandates this stricter varietal labeling, though for certain exceptions, the requirement remains 75%. Before we wrap up, here are some major producers from today's regions that you might find on the market. Definitely worth exploring. And now I'd love to hear from you. Well, have you ever visited any of these regions? What's your favorite wine producer from North America? Let's keep this conversation flowing. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you found this helpful, entertaining, or inspiring, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel or following me on Instagram. I'm aiming to share a new presentation regularly, so stay tuned for more wine adventures. Cheers and see you next time.